There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with my de facto February TBR, but in fact this is my Black History Month TBR. This is not a BookTube readathon that I'm aware of. I think there's a Blackathon going on. I didn't really care for some of the prompts on that. This is just kind of a choice that I have made to focus almost exclusively my reading for February on African American literature and a little bit of history and a little bit of other black literature. This grew out of the depth to which I fell into a biography that Doris of Aldi Books and I buddy read last November for Nonfiction November. Did I finish that sentence? A biography of Zora Neale Hurston, Wrapped in Rainbows by Valerie Boyd, that we absolutely loved. There's a review on our channels, a joint review. I'll put a link in the show notes. That made us both especially interested to read a lot more literature by Harlem Renaissance authors. And we have decided, or certainly I've decided, not to limit myself only to Harlem Renaissance literature, but to read African American literature from any era, but with a particular concentration on Harlem Renaissance. So I am absolutely delighted to present my ambitious TBR. It's like cousin of Always Doing's phrase, a pile of possibilities. There's probably no way I'm going to get to all of these books, but I'm going to attempt to get to as many as I can. One that will be a buddy read among a few booktubers is Zora Neale Hurston's debut novel. Even though no alcohol was involved in the filming of this video, I massively mispronounced the title. Jonah's Gourd Vine. I will be reading it as an ebook on Scribd, and this was published in 1934. I read quite a bit about the genesis of this novel and about the writing of and reception of this novel in the Zora Neale Hurston biography. And it's about a young man who loves too many women for his own good. I'm dying to read another Zora Neale Hurston novel. I read Their Eyes Were Watching God a couple of years ago, and as I have said every time I've mentioned it, it's my favorite American novel. And for a work of African North American history, I have chosen this book that I'm going to guess nobody on BookTube has talked about, but certainly not a famous book, and that is Almost Home by Ruma Chopra, and the subtitle is Maroons Between Slavery and Freedom in Jamaica, Nova Scotia, and Sierra Leone. I was introduced to the historical phenomenon called the Maroons by a very brief reference in the Zora Neale Hurston biography, and Maroons were settlements and cultures of escaped slaves around the world, and I'm not sure how the name Maroon got attached to that socio-historical phenomenon, but that's what ex-slave, escaped slave societies are called. And this is the story of the Trelawney Town Maroons who were exiled from their native Jamaica in 1795, subsequently moving to and creating societies in Nova Scotia and Sierra Leone. I'm buddy reading this with Karen of Run Right Reads, I think. I hope. The idea of this, and this is just, again, it's something that I had never heard of until I read the reference in the Zora Neale Hurston biography, that this is a thing, and I want to know a lot more about this thing, so watch this space. I have been wanting to get to this mammoth tome of an African American novel since I first bought it 2 years ago, and I am finally going to begin reading it during Black History Month. It's going to extend past February, but that is The Castle Cross the Magnet Carter by Kia Cawthron. It is 800 pages and published 2016, I think. Yep. Kia Cawthron was one of the writers of The Wire TV show. That means nothing to me. I've never seen it, but apparently it was an amazing TV show. And this is a historical novel that starts in 1941 and comes up to the present day, told through the lives of 4 men. 2 white brothers from rural Alabama and 2 black brothers from small-town Maryland. And there's some explosive and devastating encounter between the families. It's not a book that gets talked about very much, but everything I've ever heard about it has been enthusiastically positive, so I can't wait. I'm going to be buddy reading this with a Brita Bowler. We're going to start maybe mid-February and read it until maybe the end of March, amongst all our other reading projects, but I can't wait to get into this one. This is a classic of the Harlem Renaissance canon, Jean Toomer's Cain, and it is quite a modernist mixed media compilation. It's poetry, prose, short stories, what else? Play-like dialogues all mixed together. And that's all I know about it, but it's supposed to be amazing. Published in 1923. I will also be reading a Harlem Renaissance era novel called Plum Bun by Jessie Redmond Fawcett. Again, there wasn't a lot, but a little bit about her in this novel in the Hurston biography, and I'm going to be reading it on Kindle because it's dirt cheap there. Not that easy to track down a paper copy. And set in the Harlem Renaissance, and it's about a light-skinned African-American woman who leaves her native Philadelphia to pass as white and study art in New York City. This is also a famous novel from the Harlem Renaissance by Wallace Thurman, The Blacker the Berry. And it is about prejudice within the African-American community. Wallace Thurman was a central figure of the Harlem Renaissance. He died very young and he was married and very, very gay. And I don't know that there's going to be much about homosexuality in the book, but if I love the book, I'm certainly going to go on and read whatever biographies there might be out there of Wallace Thurman, because the way that he was described in the Hurston biography, I want to know absolutely everything about him. So I will be trying his famous novel, first published in 1929. This one I'm not sure if I'll get to, but if not, I'll hope to get to it at some point this year, and this will be a reread for me of White Tears by Harry Kunzru. I read this a couple years ago. I did it as an audio-text combo, which I think is the only way to experience this amazing novel, because there's something about the refrain that goes through it. It's a really hard novel to talk about. Believe I buy a graveyard of my own, put my enemies all down on the ground. That's a lyric that plays a central thematic role in this novel, and the way that is sung in the audiobook, it just sends a chill down your spine every time you hear it. And it's been a long time since I've tried to talk about this novel. I finally picked up a paper copy. I did it an ebook and the audiobook together, but now I've got a paper copy. It's about two white boys in, 1980s, 1990s? Fairly modern times, and they start doing sample CDs using the old blues music that they find, and they kind of put it together in creative ways, and they get kind of famous, and it just is told against and interwoven with the history of those old blues singers in the American South, and it's a page-turner of a novel, and it's a profound exploration of race and music and history, and I just thought it was absolutely incredible. So I can't wait to read it again, and maybe I'll get to it for Black History Month, but maybe not. And this is an African-American novel that I've wanted to read since it was first published. And when was that? 1990s, I think. And that is The Known World by Edward P. Jones. I remember when it came out, it won the Pulitzer. It was his first novel published very late in the author's life, and it's about slave-owning African Americans during the era of slavery in the U.S. that freed African Americans, freed slaves, became slave owners, and that's the story. And it's just supposed to be amazing. That might end up being a buddy read as well. And this is a Blame It on Steve Donahue late addition to my Black History Month TBR, and that is The Collected Poetry of County Cullen, a 336-page collection. I'm doing it on Apple Books ebook, after I heard Steve read one of County Cullen's poems on his Poetry Newbie Tag video, which I will link in the show notes below. I'm not much of a poetry reader. I knew that County Cullen was a luminary of the Harlem Renaissance and was gay, but I never thought I would particularly want to read his poetry until I heard Steve read one. So I'm going to try to read at least some of this collection of his poetry during February. And now I've forgotten, I think it might have been Dee Dee's channel, Brown Girl Reading, if I got that right. Yes, it was. It was Brown Girl Reading's channel. One of her top books of 2018. I have added because it's only a 100-page novella, and I have it on Scribd, and that is Slave Old Man by Patrick Chamoiseau, translated from the French and Creole by Linda Coverdale. It's about an elderly slave's daring escape into the wild from a plantation in Martinique, and I will definitely be adding that to my Black History Month TBR, thanks to Dee Dee's strong recommendation. And lastly, as if that wasn't enough, I am collecting the publisher Faber. It's their 90th anniversary this year, and they're putting out single short stories in attractive paperbacks, 40 pages each or something, and one of them that's on its way in the mail to me is from South Africa by an author that I have wanted to read for a long time, a South African writer, Patina Gappa. And the story, part of this Faber Stories series, is an elegy for Easterly, just published earlier in January. And it's, $5 to buy online. You can get it Kindle or you can buy the paper, but the paper ones are so beautiful. And I don't have it to put up here, but I'm going to read that as well. My first Patina Gappa anything. So, do you think I'll get to all of these books? Probably not, but I think I think the only other reading I'm going to do in February is I'll continue with my Don Quixote, and I will try the selection for February for Britta's Nobel Women, the Pearl Buck novel. Other than that, this is what I'm going to be reading. And of course, if I bail, I'm sure there'll be a bail or two. I'll find other books that fit in with Black History Month. Oh, wait, there is more. There is one more. I didn't put it on my TBR. American historian Annette Gordon-Reed has written quite a bit about the Thomas Hendry, Sally Hemings historical topic. And one of her books on that topic is a more general one. The one that's available to me as an audiobook by Annette Gordon-Reed is called The Hemingses of Monticello, An American Family. And it was Sally Hemings that was Thomas Jefferson's slave and rape victim. And this is the story of the entire family. It's on Scribd as an audio. It's a 30-hour audiobook. I don't know. I will try it. I haven't sampled the audio narrator, but I might tackle that one. She is more famous for her one that's about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. It's called Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, An American Controversy from 1997. I think other booktubers that are kind of doing their own thing for Black History Month might be reading that one. But because I have the more recent one from 2008 on audio, I'm going to maybe try it. And I also want to note to self, Sean, I have on my canceled my Audible subscription a year or more ago because I was bailing too much and they were getting a little pissed off with me. But I still have access to all the books that I have, and one of them is Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, an 18-hour audiobook. And I studied that book in grad school, and I read half of it for class, ran out of time, never finished it, despite having loved it. So that's just kind of been this waiting for the other shoe to drop phenomena in my reading life for the last 20 years or however long ago. So I've got it on audio. I might do it that way and finally finish the book that I had enjoyed so much, but just didn't have time with all the crunch of all the stuff I had to read for grad school. But that's also a possibility. So what do you think? Have I got enough to keep me busy? I am so excited about this, and I will be updating you in my Friday reads throughout February with how I make out. Hey, well, I almost forgot about the last-minute addition to my TBR. This came out of the new tag or whatever I launched last week, massaging my TBR, and I stumbled upon, on my own Goodreads TBR, a collection of short stories by an African-American writer published recently, short fiction about an ex-slave settlement formed after a successful slave revolt. And it's called Insurrections by Rion Amilcar Scott. I ordered my copy the same day I did the video. It's on its way to me. and I am planning to include it as the short story component of my Black History Month TBR. I can't wait to give it a try. Hey, one last addition. Today I found out Karen of Run Right Reads is having a Run Right Reads book club for the whole year, and for Black History Month, one of the books she's doing that month is by a black South African female writer that I'd never heard of. The novel is called Mother to Mother, and the author is Sindiwe Magona, and I have it as an audiobook on Scribd, so I'm moving all the other audiobooks I talked about to the back burner. May still get to one or both of those, but I'm going to start with this one because she's doing her discussion video on February 18th, so I'll start with that audiobook. That is fabulous. What is it about? That's all I need to know. Black, female, South African novelist. I'm in. There's so few of them that I've heard of or that have become known outside of South Africa. That's just exploring the legacy of apartheid through the lens of a woman remembering her life marked by oppression and injustice. That's enough for me. But apparently the author was inspired to write it when she found out that a Fulbright scholar named Amy Beale, who'd been killed while working to organize the first ever democratic elections in 1993, had died just a few yards away from her home. Sounds amazing. Alright, Sean, finalize the goddamn video and get it. Don't add anything more, for God's sakes.